Yeah, that was a great time. Alright guys, what's happening? Back again with another video, and today I wanted to talk about Battalion 1944. The hot, new, competitive shooter, currently only available on the PC in early access. So before we get into the review, I just wanted to say, I know the game has been out for a couple of days, and I could have rushed to put a video out, but I decided I didn't want to give anybody an uninformed opinion because I don't really believe in that. So I took a little bit of extra time to actually play the game and give it a fair chance before opening my mouth. And now that I have done so, I think that I am qualified to give my opinion and official review on it and share it with you guys. So first things first, what is this game all about? What is it aiming to do, and what does it stand for? What purpose does this game serve? Well, think back to the Kickstarter campaign trailer. Of course, it's been a couple of years, but from what I remember and what I took away from it is that this game is being made by a handful of ex-AAA developers that are basically tired of what's been going on in gaming lately and the type of games that have been coming out. And what their goal was to do was to create an old-school World War II competitive shooter that focuses primarily on gunplay and player skill. In the video, the developers talked a lot about the games that they loved and grew up playing. So what does that scream to you? None other than Call of Duty, of course. And they actually mentioned Call of Duty several times, specifically COD 2 in the trailer. And I remember the trailer being very emotionally charged on the developers' half. They talked about games they played growing up as kids and how much fun they had and how basically no one was making the game that they wanted to play today, so that they were going to do it themselves. Very successful trailer. And they hit their goal in 3 days. So the question now comes down to, did they do what they say they were going to do? And the short answer is yes, they absolutely did. Now you got to keep in mind, again, that this game is in early access. So when you're looking at gameplay of the game, you say, okay, the graphics aren't that great, they could be a lot better, and a lot of the animations could definitely be smoother. But the important thing here is, what is the gunplay like? And my conclusion is, it's old school. It's definitely old school. Very fast gameplay, very, very fast time to kill. When I got into my first match, I was shocked at how fast you get melted in this game. So there's definitely a skill gap that needs to be closed, which, in my opinion, doesn't take very long. Myself, I was able to adjust to it within a couple of minutes, and then, I could finally get into the game and start having some fun. For weapons, it's got all your standard World War II weapons that you would expect in this game. One thing that they did, and I think is actually really cool, is that you can't use certain weapons if you're on a certain team. For example, if you're on the Allied team and you want to use a submachine gun, you'll be using the Tommy gun. You can't use the MP40. If you're on the Axis team and you want to use a rifle, you can't use the M1 Garand, you get the Gewehr 43. Which is an interesting twist. I actually think it's a really good idea. I'm not sure if the guns are mathematically the same. Like, for example, is the Tommy gun the same exact thing as the MP40, just reskinned? I don't think it is, but personally, I did not have any trouble adjusting to what guns I was able to use depending on my team. They all felt quite similar, so I don't think it's going to cause any type of problem for most people. Because, again, the game is heavily focused on player skill, so it doesn't really matter what gun you're using. It's all about how good of a player you are. Let's talk about map design. For me, maps felt pretty good. It was about exactly what I was expecting. Maps range in size from small to medium. There's not really any really large maps in this game, which I think is a good thing. There are lots of tight corridors in areas of the maps that are kind of designed to force you into close quarters combat with each other. But really, there's areas that are suitable for any class and any play style, which sounds cliche, but is pretty needed in a game like this. One thing I noticed about the maps, lots of choke points and lots of places for snipers to camp, which on some maps can become a huge problem and get really annoying. Speaking of sniping, I want to talk about sniping real quick because it seems to be an area that a lot of people are interested in every game. Sniping feels very good in this game. Very easy, very fun, very satisfying when you get a kill. I believe it is almost always a one-shot kill with any sniper, but I could be wrong about that. But I did not get any hit markers at all. But keep in mind, again, very fast time to kill, so you can melt those guys pretty quickly if your aim is good, which is what the game is all about. Overall, as far as the core package of the game goes, like the weapons, the maps, the gunplay, the skill gap, everything feels really good. It's almost exactly what I was expecting, except maybe just a little bit sweatier. But overall, these guys have delivered pretty much exactly what they said they were going to, so a lot of people are happy with it, I think. Let's talk about a few cons, just to be fair and balanced. First of all, As you saw in the beginning of this video, the matchmaking is absolutely horrendous. I actually ended up quitting out of that waiting room that I showed you in the beginning of the video after 10 minutes and 5 seconds, which is just ridiculous. Obviously unintentional, but that's got to be the top priority to fix right there. And once it is fixed, it will make for a better player experience for sure. I like the fact that we have server browser in the game, so that's how I've been getting into most of my games because the wait time just gets to be too much after a while. So it's nice. If I feel like playing TDM, I could play TDM. If I want to play Dom or Search and Destroy, I could play those two. Other drawbacks of the game are really just things that I know are going to be added in later, i.e. lack of customization, few maps, etc., etc. And that's all going to be fixed in due time, and the developers have actually put a roadmap on their website that says exactly what they're going to be doing and when for the remainder of the year. Overall, I think Battalion's a really solid game so far, but the big question is, how does it stack up against COD World War II? The short and obvious answer to this is, it doesn't. It obviously doesn't, and it can't compete right now. With Battalion in its current state, these games are apples and oranges. World War II was developed by a AAA studio with probably 400 plus employees and millions in funding from Activision, which is a publicly traded company. Bulkhead Interactive, on the other hand, is an indie studio that got its funds from a Kickstarter project. Now, I'm not knocking what they did. Like I said, I think the game is really solid so far, but you can't compare what they've done for their early access Steam title to the polished and refined and clean looking game that World War II is. It's just not fair or appropriate, so we're not even going to go there. But here's the thing. I'm going to start being a little more opinionated now because up until now I've been pretty objective in this review. What I think Bulkhead is going for is not necessarily going to try to be a competitor to COD. Even though they said themselves that they are taking heavy influence from the old Call of Duty games, and you might hear that and then look at the gameplay and say to yourself, okay, at face value these are two very similar games. But after playing Battalion, I realize they're really not that similar. They're hardly similar at all, actually. If you're good at COD and you pick this game up, you're not going to be good at it right off the bat. I'm a perfect example of that. The nature of Battalion is much more competitive and serious, and it's not a casual shooter like COD can be. And for these reasons and many others, I would deem them uncomparable. I think it's much more appropriate to compare Battalion to Counter-Strike than it is to COD. It's a skill-based competitive shooter, and even though Battalion's going to be coming out on Xbox One and PS4, it's really a PC shooter, and it's very obvious when you play it that it's designed to be played on PC. PC FPS has a much different feel than a console FPS, and I think people are going to notice that when the game does get ported to console. And I don't think it's going to be very popular on a console, but we'll have to see. So in conclusion, to answer the age-old question that people have been wondering since the Kickstarter came out, no, the game is not a COD killer by any means. But I don't think it was ever originally intended to be. The makers of Battalion have delivered on a lot of their promises so far, but in the end, I don't know how big the market for this type of game is really going to be. The game capitalizes on nostalgia, which in my opinion only goes so far to bring someone to something, but after a while, people generally want to move forward in life. So I think this game is probably going to gain some more attention down the road for a while, initially, and then kind of taper off and stay within its own niche. And I think that niche is going to be a very tight-knit, solid, and mature community, which is good. Or I could be completely wrong, and it could explode on the esports scene and rival Counter-Strike, although I don't think that's very likely, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. All in all, Battalion, good game so far for 15 bucks. It's not the COD killer, but it is fun, and has been well received so far with a decent player base. Now I want to know from you guys, what do you think of Battalion so far? Have you played it? Have you only seen it? Does it feel good? Does it remind you of COD? Or does it remind you of Counter-Strike or something else? Let me know down there in the comments below. Guys, that's all for this video. Thank you for watching. Please leave a like if you enjoyed, and consider subscribing. And I'll see you in the next one.